Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
What happens at the moment of death? What are the black or translucent blobs people sometimes report? Could the whole UFO uproar be a ploy to control the population?
Hello, and welcome to the 903rd edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, coming to you from WOON, AM, and FM radio here in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, on the Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live, and on TuneIn.com. I'm Ben, and those diverse questions came from my co-host, partner in Paranormal Adventures, and Dad, Paul. And today we bring you some open lines, and this show is a real live one.
And we welcome sitting in today as our guest co-host, the one and only Rick Eno, our trusty cousin, a certified investigator for the Mutual UFO Network, and our show's Northern California reporter. He comes to us via Skype from the San Francisco area.
So, Rick Eno, welcome back to Behind the Paranormal with, the Trace Enos here.
Well, thank you. And it's a pleasure to be here. And more importantly, Ben, I love that shirt.
Hey, sometimes you just have to feel like you're on vacation when you're not on vacation.
Hawaii's appropriate today.
Yes, indeed.
Well, was it, what's the movie with, was it Clint Eastwood and the lunatic, he's a radio host, and the lunatic woman kind of comes into his life and yells at her, and it's, I can't remember the name, but there's a shirt just like that one of his co-hosts.
I was thinking Jurassic Park, where Newman from Seinfeld,
okay.
Yeah, that's more what I was going for, because I have more of a Newman vibe than a Clint Eastwood vibe.
All right, well, we'll deal with dinosaurs later, but we better get on with the show here. So let's get on with it. And we have a lot of things to get to today. Why don't we start with Charlie from Willow Creek, Oregon.
Ah, yes. Becoming as dependable as Peter, it seems.
Yes, we have many, many faithful questions.
Pervasive Peter.
Good questions.
Yes. So Charlie writes to us. What do the Wampanoag people actually say? Wampanoag. Jeez. Wampanoag people actually say about the Bridgewater Triangle. And additionally, how would one go about cleansing the area if that were possible? Would commanding a herd of pigs to absorb the negativity, then go over a cliff and drown, work for the Bridgewater locale? I'm not being facetious. Sorry if it sounds like it.
Well, the background here is the Bridgewater Triangle is one of the areas we investigate as a flap area, our own term, where there are all sorts of phenomena going on that are not traditionally related to one another. A lot of UFO sightings from way, way back. And the Wampanoag people are the ones who have jurisdictional sway over much of that land. It's over 220-mile square area, practically within sight of Boston. A lot of people don't realize that inside of the big city, essentially, is this wilderness area that's really quite beautiful in itself. We've had some interesting experiences there, so have a lot of other people. There are, along with UFOs and cryptids, like strange creatures, including thunderbirds, as the First Nations might say. There's some strange semi-military activity that we observed once. There are puckwudgies, which are supposed to be little people, and we've talked to witnesses there about that, and we actually got some strange photographs ourselves that would appear to be little people when we were there in 2010. I was there twice last week. I don't like to be there. Many of the flap areas we investigate are sacred. To me, there's a certain sanctity to the Pennsylvania Triangle, in my experience, although others have had bad things happen there. But it's very negative about, and you yourself picked that up, Ben, when we've been there, sort of a negative vibe to the place, and, which is, I think, what Charlie's getting at. How would you begin to remedy that? Or could we?
Well, that's a great question, and the answer is, I don't know. I guess it's not my particular area of expertise, I suppose, and I wouldn't want to go about telling people what to do because I don't know. What I can tell you is commanding a herd of pigs to absorb it and then go running off a cliff and drown. That would not work because
there are no pigs there that I've ever seen.
Or maybe there are. Maybe, who knows?
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about that, little quick aside...
That's a gospel reference.
It is. Yeah. It is indeed. And it's not quite accurate. It's not inaccurate. It's mostly the sea, anything that's a reference to water in Christian scripture. I think a lot of people kind of miss this. I learned this very recently, that it's actually meant to symbolize chaos. That it's like the chaos of the waters, and also in the sort of cosmological outlook of it, the abyss, as it's called, was in the water of chaos, which the pigs being thrown into the water means that they're going to the abyss.
Yeah, it was the Gadarene demoniac, and Jesus had cast a demon into the pigs, and that's the gospel story, and they ran into the water and drowned, and I always kind of felt sorry for the pig farmer.
Well, the interesting thing is that the demon there, I think it was Legion. I don't know which one it was.
No, it was
a different one. I'm getting my things confused. But the interesting thing is that they say, "Why do you come to bother us before the time?" And which is an interesting statement in and of itself, because it references something else, but we're not going to get into that because there's someone calling.
Okay, well, I'll take it over. Rick, I know you're not familiar with that particular triangle, but do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, just what Ben just talked about in the areas, having the pigs go off a cliff into the water. What's interesting to me is that anytime there's a reference of water, and I just learned this on the show, educating me, water representing chaos. Anytime you see... I experience any type of paranormal activity, it's always a high water table.
Yeah,
always.
We found the same thing. It's interesting, yeah. Well, there you have it. I think we'd better move on to our caller, and perhaps we can make a few points about this question afterwards.
Indeed.
Hello, welcome to WOON and Behind the Paranormal.
It is Tom Spitaleri who is joining us. Tom
Spitaleri, okay, very good. Tom is a phenomenon, is a force of nature, especially in the Haverhill, Mass area. And Tom, what's cooking? Okay, we got him there?
We still have you there, Tom?
Oh.
Thought we did.
Okay.
Give us a call back, Tom.
Yeah, give us a call back, Tom. Yeah, 401-766-1240. All right, so, but just as far as the, did we really tackle Charlie's question in its entirety? Okay.
Well, the question in question was how would one go about cleansing an area like that? And with a quick aside in sort of understanding some ancient interpretations, I think that just based on things that I've kind of learned over time, it would take a lot of work to get through it. It's kind of like it's like when you get sick and you don't do anything about it for a really long time, and it kind of just gets worse over time. So instead of just going to a doctor and saying, all right, well, I have X, disease, or I get a funny feeling in my toe, kind of thing. At this point, the toe is now infected, and you got to do something about it, and it's got to be a more drastic procedure, whatever that may be. And I'm not sure what that would be.
Well, what issue with the triangle in that vicinity, in the Bridgewater Triangle, is that it's very sparsely populated. Most of the others we deal with the exception of Rendlesham Forest, are, well, even in Rendlesham Forest, we had a neighborhood meeting and a talk with people. When you can get people together who live in the area, you can stress the need for positivity. But there's a great deal of negativity because of the human activity in the Bridgewater Triangle, and again, there are very few people who live within that.
Yeah, and it's
the ones who do have a lot of interesting stories.
It's supposed to be the Wampanoag Reservation too.
Well, they skedaddle every meeting like once a year.
Yeah, they just
don't
said
like it either.
Yeah, it's too weird, and they won't stay there.
Yeah.
So, that tells you something, too.
But there is a long history of cult activity, murders. Your brother and I were there last week at one point, and we were, kind of in the four-wheel drive doing, going down this alleged road. And there was a car parked in the middle of the road. We couldn't get by. And there was a guy in there who didn't look alive. I said, oh, my gosh. So I got out and I kind of crept up and I knocked. And fortunately, the guy was asleep. So what he's doing there in the middle of this place, in the middle of the day, sleeping, I don't know. But I mean, to each his own. Nothing wrong with sleep. So he, I said, I asked very politely, could you just, I'll back up and you can go by. And he said, and he waved as it went by. So that turned out to be okay. But you just never know when that place is. Terrible history of.
Well, it's interesting because I think in our day and age we have this very odd idea that place doesn't matter, right? And that there's no such thing as like a sacred. Anywhere can be sacred, which is kind of
everywhere kind of is.
It kind of is, yeah. But there are some places that are a little more than others, right?
Oh yeah.
And it's like I think we as good old modern day people kind of tend to forget that. And so it's kind of like there's just some places you don't go, and you're not really sure why. Maybe it's like some sort of genetic thing. Maybe it's like an ancestral memory. Maybe it's just like a good old gut feeling that you just are like, yeah, I'm just going to steer clear there. If anybody was to go about and, I guess, quote-unquote cleanse it, whatever that means, I think I'm not sure how one would go about that, Charlie. I'm not sure. I
think the more people you have being positive, I think the answer is yes, you can change it, but you need a lot of people coming together as a family. And that's asking a lot today. And we should ask a lot, because we are a family. And I think we can affect it that way. So, but I don't see that happening in that area, because there aren't any people. There aren't a lot.
Paul, I'd ask this question about that. I mean, there are some areas you're probably not supposed to cleanse. I mean, you can walk into, there's a tunnel here in Los Gatos that a bunch of Chinese railroad workers died back in the 1800s, and you can walk into that tunnel and it just feels like I need to leave right now. Yeah. It feels like a place of that. But my question would be asked is this: what are they trying to cleanse exactly? Is it the entire area? Is it their house? Because if they're trying to cleanse their house, are there? I know in Hawaiian techniques, because I've recently researched, there's tea leaves they'll put at the corner of the house. I'm sure in voodoo and hoodoo there's cleansing techniques. Is that something that you think is possible to do in the flap area, to cleanse a small area? Because maybe that's what they're referring to instead of the entire area.
No, I'm pretty sure she's talking about the entire area.
Okay.
Because we've talked about it before on and off the show, a couple of different things. That it's kind of like the area's sick, for lack of better words, and it's So it's. I mean, she lives in Willow Creek, Oregon. So I'm pretty sure
she's a safe distance.
Yeah, exactly. So she gets a good sort of bird's eye view from Google Earth on it if she'd like. But I'm pretty sure just from the context, because like I said, it's supposed to be a Wampanoag reservation, right? And they're just not there. They'll only go there once a year for meetings, and that's about it.
A lot of stories of phantom drivers and
phantom dogs.
The phantom drivers. I mean, with all due respect to our Massachusetts neighbors, of which you are one, Ben.
Yes, I am.
The drivers could fit that description at any point. Tailgating, disappearing, speeding. Anyway.
Closer you get to Worcester or Boston, the worse we get.
Yeah. So thank you, Charlie, for the question. Who do we have next, Ben?
We have Robbie, who asked us a question on YouTube, and we can hop into that. So I just wanted to ask to you, Mr. Eno, why are the quote-unquote old ideas automatically bad, as he said? I hate to tell him, but old ideas to a degree are correct. His ideas are completely wrong. New methods of detection are always welcome, but that doesn't mean that the parallel universe is wrong. All these entities are spiritual, as in religious in nature.
All right, I'm not quite sure what the question is, but I've had a little back and forth with Robbie by email, by message, and I think he is thinking that I'm kind of anti-spiritual when it comes to, I think, probably the paranormal events related to ghost phenomena, this kind of thing. And I think he was listening to a show where I was discussing the Bridgewater case of 1974, where I was working with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and they were was poltergeist activity to the nth degree in this house, and witnessed by police officers and first responders and this sort of thing. So I don't know if he quite understood that I didn't say that just because they were physical, because I had physical entanglement with a couple, that they were not demons. Okay, because what do you mean by demons? We don't use that term generally because of the baggage it has, and I think what we're going to do is we do have a caller.
We'll table this question,
and
we will welcome Tom Spitaleri again
at the next city council meeting.
Yes.
All right. So we have Tom Spitaleri back with us, hopefully. Tom?
Hey, how we doing?
Hey, Tom. Welcome to WOON. What's cooking?
Oh, everything's cooking. We got a lot cooking on, especially next year. This year is slowing down a little bit, but we're speeding up. We got one quick little ad I want to add on. I forgot to ask you, Paul, but this Saturday night, my good friend and your good friend, Mike Stevens from Granite Sky, is coming to Haverhill to do a UFO sky watch at Hilldale Cemetery this weekend.
I'm thinking of going to that.
To raise some money for Hilldale. It's going to be a fun event. We're going to do a little ghost hunt before that, which was unbeknownst to me until Mike put out the video on this thing. I'll share it to your page. You got to see this thing. Mike did a great job on this thing.
Oh, Mike is terrific. I just want a little background, everybody. Tom is found himself head of the board of trustees of the Hilldale Cemetery in Haverhill, and he's
doing a wonderful job.
Doing a tremendous job to raise money to restore this beautiful historic cemetery. So that's what we're talking about. So go ahead, Tom. And we got something coming up in April, huh?
And to help restore this beautiful old cemetery, we need to raise some funds. And we've been doing it right along, and you've been helping out great with the New England Parafest. But the last 2 years, due to COVID, things changed a little bit. The finances haven't changed much. They're still in tough shape. So this has been 2.5 years in the making. Next year's New England Parafest, Parafest 2022. Wow, it's hardy for me to even think. We're almost, 2022. Wow.
Yeah.
Times are flying.
Yeah, when you're having fun.
Yeah, when you're having fun, time flies. So we're going to be doing a huge event. It's going to start Friday, April 15th, and run through Tuesday, April 26th. And let me get this. This is a Parafest. This has never been done before in New England, to my knowledge, this type of event. But we're going to try to pull it off. What's going to title is we have nonprofits signing up from April 15th to April 21st, maybe the 22nd. Then on April 23rd and 24th, we're going to be in Kittery, Maine for your typical type of Parafest. And some of the great speakers we got coming in is Deb Perkins from Maine. She's going to do something on paranormal. Nina Pelzanini from your neck of the woods, Paul.
Mm-hmm.
Rhode Island Bigfoot, she's going to be talking about that. A demonologist, Carl Johnson, who's been in the field almost as long as you have.
Oh, yeah, we know Carl, yep.
Dave McCullough from Squatchachusetts will be talking about Massachusetts Bigfoot.
Good old
sighting.
Dave, yep.
And then we got you, Paul, coming on that Saturday.
Don't forget Ben.
And Ben, yeah. Ben. Paul and Ben, yeah, they always come together, Batman and Robin. And then we got Tom D'Agostino. And then we have, who's published, about 20 books now, if I'm not mistaken?
Oh, easily, yeah.
In all realms of the paranormal.
We have the same publisher.
Oh, okay. Matt Moniz, is coming up with at least one of the Hewen sisters for sure, maybe both of them, and they're going to talk about UFOs and their experiences. And I had Matt on this week, and he's quite the UFO researcher.
Oh, yeah.
Then we have Mike Stevens coming to speak about UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going to do from 12 to 1. Thank you again, Paul and Moon Radio, for this. We're going to do a live broadcast from 12 to 1. Is that correct?
Of this show,
Sunday?
Yep.
Yep, on this show, yep. We'll do a roundtable discussion with some of the speakers. That should be fun.
That's a popular way to do the show.
Yes. And then we have Nate Brislin, young kid, who works at the International Cryptozoology Museum, who runs a bunch of cryptid pages. If you're into crypto, probably seen him on. He did a hour-and-a-half movie on Maine Bigfooting. So he's going to be talking about Maine Bigfooting. And then Connecticut Paranormal Research is also coming up on Sunday to speak.
Excellent.
So we got a weekend full of people coming, and we still might end this on. We may run this Friday night, run a 3-night talk. I'm just waiting on a couple more people to call up and see if we can do it.
Well, it sounds exciting. And we do have a link on our charity page to the Hilldale Cemetery, and as soon as we get all the information, we're going to put it on our website for the Parafest, and we're going to be promoting that. We're going to be hearing a lot from Tom as that date approaches. Not as far away as it sounds. So.
No, excellent. Not when you put an event like this on. Believe it or not, that's right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Tom, thank you so much for calling in. We'll look forward to talking to you again, and maybe we'll see you at Hilldale in a couple of days.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
All right.
Have a great day. Yep, bye-bye.
Thank you. Okay, so, so as far as Robbie's question, to kind of get back, I don't know if he fully understood what I was saying. And we always say, the old ideas being that it's about dead people. Maybe that's correct. I've never seen it in over 50 years. I think there are other explanations that are weirder, but maybe I'd like to get maybe into more of Robbie's points as we go in the next open line show, because it just came in yesterday. I haven't digested it yet. We had a lot of questions in front of it.
I can see what he's saying. Excuse me. I think the argument is, if all these entities have been around forever, then arguably there's some sort of religious significance to them.
Well, what do you mean by forever? I mean, if all time and space is simultaneous, as the special theory of relativity suggests, and also modern physics suggests, then everything is forever. I mean, what do you mean by forever? I mean, again, you have to have a certain amount of the island theory and sequential time in order to believe some of this. And there could be a religious agenda here, and I'm often being blamed because of my seminary background for not embracing other people's religious beliefs.
No, well, I see what he's saying, and there's a lot of fundamental questions that have to be asked.
Yeah,
one, which is how does time function, which is it's based on a perceived reality. There's no there's no such thing there. You got to understand your terms, all right? So what are we talking about, right?
Yes.
The term demon didn't even mean demon before. It just kind of meant like a spirit that kind of helped people out. Socrates talks about having
the Greeks. The term comes from a Greek word.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Or are we talking about lowercase g gods? What are we have to understand what we're referring to.
A lot of people would say yes.
Right.
Religious.
If we're going to talk about it like that, I think the problem is we have this very weird understanding of history, thanks to our 19th century German friends, who basically turned history into a science, where, it's like, everything. One of my favorite things I learned about Karl Marx was that his theory was that all history was based on class struggle. Everything in history was based on...
Karl Marx was an idiot.
He was.
Yeah, completely wrong.
Yeah, so we have. I think the understanding is, we have to come from understanding that our ancestors were experiencing a reality that we just don't experience now, right? We're looking at subjective observations of an objective reality, right? Just because we don't see minotaurs today doesn't mean it's not possible that minotaurs haven't been seen before. Now you're seeing things
King of cryptids.
Right. You can even see nowadays people are getting really into skinwalkers. It's and canine cryptids, which are just fun materialistic ways of saying werewolves, right? I mean, it's we have to understand that these are subjective experiences and an objective reality. Just because they're old doesn't mean they're dumb, right?
Right.
But we also have to understand that we experience things just differently, right? If you sent us back to like ancient Greece, you're like, okay, well let's just assume they speak English, and we talk to these people. The way that the sentences would be constructed in their experiences, we couldn't relate. We wouldn't be able to relate to most of it.
Yeah.
And I think that, just because, not all ideas are wrong, I think we're understanding them differently.
Yes, I think you're right. Rick, you want to jump in here before the break?
Well, I was just going to say that, it's interesting to how, listening to you, Ben, and the question from the person, basically the points of view in this field, like how they all come from different points of view, and it's really where you anchor yourself to, whether it's religion or some other spiritual or universal or however you want to look at it. And I think one of the challenges that we have to look at when we get a question like that is how do you merge all those into something that we can all agree upon? And I think that's the challenge.
Yeah, it is. Well, religion is our response to our experience of God, whether as a group or as an individual. And it's not an end in itself. It's supposed to be a tool. And anyway, over millennia, things can be misunderstood and mistranslated, things like that. But very good question, and we'll deal more with Robbie's further points in another show. And we have a caller?
We do, but we should go to break first.
We'll go to break first. Okay, you're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben and Rick Eno on WOON 1240 AM and 99.5 FM in New England's beautiful Blackstone River Valley. And we shall be right back, so stick with us.
The night is alive. Join us and take a walk on the weird side when you tune in to The Kingdom of Nye, hosted by Heather Wade, the finest in late night talk. Listen live free weeknights starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time at thekingdomofnye.com, talkstreamlive.com, and the Paranormal Radio app. Wanna take a ride?
And welcome back to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben and Rick Eno on WOON 1240 AM, 99.5 FM. And we have a caller who, welcome to WOON and Behind the Paranormal.
Hi.
Hi. So, what's, there's a case we really didn't have a chance to look at, but you can explain it, can you?
I can do a lead-in.
Yeah, Rick, why don't you pinch hit here for me?
Yeah, let me do a lead into this. So this is actually a case where there is, I'm going to summarize and let the caller explain it, but a case where there's an old piece of furniture over 200 years old.
Oh, right.
That's been in the family for generations. And basically, there was no problems with it at all until probably around, I'm going to assume like 5 years ago or something like that. Anyways, to summarize it, what's happening is a healer has recognized that there is something in that piece of furniture that is trying to attach itself to, or has attached itself, and quite for some time, to a young girl. And so that's the lead in, and I'll let the caller handle the rest.
Okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so this piece of furniture has been in my husband's family for many generations, and the reason why, what prompted me to call a healer was because my daughter, over a number of years, has been really suffering from depression and anxiety, and it's really come to, a head, and so we were just desperate to seek any kind of help. So being that I'm from Hawaii, I was told about a healer in Hawaii. I don't live there anymore. I moved to California, and so I arranged this meeting. In this meeting, the healer had no idea where I was located, but knew my house and said, if you enter your house, turn right and another right, what do you have in there? And I described what was there. It was a guest room. And then I said, there's a dresser. And he goes, that's what the guides are telling me to do. There's a spirit that is attached to that dresser that has now, or an entity that is now, within your daughter and is very negatively impacting her. And he also said, without him knowing anything, that dresser is really, really old. Who did it belong to? And I said, my husband's grandparents. He was like, no, it's even older than that. And the history of that dresser, from what I understand, it was brought over from Europe. And it's very, very old. And, and it happened about 5 years ago. The crazy started happening 5 years ago. So what do you think?
Well, one question for you. It started 5 years ago. When did you move? Did you move in California? Like, were you in a previous house and then you moved here, and that's when the behavioral changes started?
Yeah, so we relocated. We were in Los Angeles for a number of years. And then about maybe six years ago, we moved from Los Angeles up to Northern California. And the dresser came with us.
Okay.
And up until that point, there was no sort of activity, nothing?
No. It was totally fine. I mean, it was very happy. I mean, there was nothing going on. And, you know, after we got up to Northern California, it seemingly was fine, and then it really wasn't fine. Then things started slowly declining, especially with my daughter. You know, this healer had told me that my daughter is like an empath, you know, is like very empathetic and picks up on feelings of people and is not able to tune it out. So, and she was about 8 years old at the time of, 5 years ago. She's now, 13.
All right. Well, the way you describe it and the way you say the healer describes it is very plausible, but I've never seen it in that way. I think that you have to keep your feet on the ground in these situations, or you can just go all off. Really, it can get pretty crazy. I think the first thing I would do, and hopefully you've already done this, is to look at all other non-paranormal possibilities, medical possibilities for your daughter's condition, other causes, that sort of thing. And then if that all works out, then you might want to look at a paranormal explanation as a last resort. Now, I've seen time and again what are generally considered to be, quote, haunted objects. And I was on the Travel Channel in 2002 talking about this very thing at one of the Newport, Rhode Island mansions. There was a haunted suit of armor. And they wanted to know, well, what is this about? And they expect you to say, well, there's a spirit that lives in the armor. Well, first of all, spirits are, as discarnate entities are problematic from the laws of physics in our world anyway. But having them sort of live in an object is I think, a very poor explanation for what's actually happening. I described, and the director didn't like this, of this presentation, Curses of New England, that you have in physics the notion of the consciousness wave. Picture it as an LP vinyl record, say, or even a CD with lumps in it, okay? It's all on the same plane, as it were. Maybe goes around and round, but the lumps are the people and things that we know that are part of our consciousness, okay? Which ends up being a group consciousness. So this dresser, if it's certainly very old, has been part of the consciousness really of the entire family, and there could be entities that. Do you ever see the Harry Potter movies with the port keys? Everybody grabs it and they go somewhere else. I think that I'm not wild about those movies, but I think that is a rather good illustration of what can happen with these things. They could be, as it were, intersect points for other personalities. They may be ancestors. They may be descendants who in the future will have it, because time and space is really all simultaneous. Einstein essentially proved that in the special theory of relativity. Or it could be, I know that, as Rick has suggested to you, a way for parasites to get into your world and start to feed, which means they generally push buttons and mess things up. So all these things are possibilities. I'd really have to kind of see the object. But the fact that, as Ben brought out, when you answered Ben's question, it didn't happen until you moved to a certain place, indicates, I think, exactly what I'm saying. It's not just the consciousness wave, it's all sorts of environmental factors, including electromagnetic fields, as Rick was pointing out, high water tables, clay and sandy soils, all sorts of things that will make it easier for these energies to flow in our physical world, as it were. And I hope I'm not being too complicated here, but I think we may be looking at something like that. Ben, any further thoughts on that? And Rick, too?
Well, Rick, if you have thoughts, because I could go on a diatribe, and you never know.
But I love your diatribes, so please, Ben, you first.
Okay. I guess, I think it's interesting that moving from one location to another had an effect, right? as I was saying earlier on the air, which unfortunately you were not on with us, place is a very important thing that I think is really played down in our modern world. That space is a very important thing, right? So it's like making a space your own or whatever has some sort of significance. We're not really sure why, but for whatever reason, there's a significance there, or there's some sort of self-help thing to that. But it's there's something significant about something being your space. In this case, wherever you've moved in California, California happens to be plagued with many different ton of seismic activity, sandy soils, high water tables. In effect, it's really kind of like a geographically terrible place to live. It's as having many friends that live in L.A., they love to tell me how fun it is when there's earthquakes, and I still can't get over that because I'm Rhode Island kid forever, unfortunately. Anyway, I think that one of the really important things, even at the end of the day, regardless of very in-depth physics, or medical anomalies or anything in that realm, is that you kind of have to come together as a family and make the space your space, if you will. Capital Y, everybody's space. Because it's yours, right? So it's you have to really bring in a lot of love and a lot of just. For lack of better words, not to sound super mushy, positive energy into the mix, right? Because whatever, if there's an entity involved, whatever that entity is, thrives off of chaos in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's feeding on, if there is an entity, or if there's no entity at all, right? And you just happen to be experiencing some sort of anomaly based on geographical evidence from basically anywhere in California.
Well, also, children are often treated in the sense that they need to be handled with kid gloves when it comes to these things. I've never found that. Children see everything. And did you say your daughter was 8 years old?
She was 8 when all this started happening, and now she just turned 13.
Oh, okay.
And so it's been progressively getting worse and worse.
Okay.
And so she's definitely not the same child that she was at 8. Obviously, she's growing into being her own person, pushing boundaries, but I feel it really goes beyond that. And she doesn't even like to look at videos of herself when she was younger, and she's like, that's not me. I'm not that person.
This is a classic. You see this in some cases where, of course, entering a very turbulent time of life, there are things that can take advantage of that. I think communication as well as love is very, very essential at this point. I always believe that parents should be parents, not buddies to their children. But there is a certain closeness that can be achieved beyond buddiness, so to speak, if I'm coining a term, by being a parent and communicating. As I say, whether 8 or 14, they see everything. So you want to make sure you have all the information about what's happening. I understand your concern. I've seen it many times. It bears watching. I don't know about outside activities. That's very important at their age, in order to expend energy outside the home. Sports or whatever. I know the COVID thing has been very difficult, especially on the West Coast. So these are all questions, if you'd like to speak privately, that we could, get to rather than just do it on the air. Okay, well, why don't you be in touch with Rick, and if, with your permission, he could give me the contact information and we could talk off the air.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure, yeah.
All right. Good. Well, thank you very much. We're not mentioning your name, but we will be in touch.
Okay, thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you for calling in.
Okay. All right, bye.
Bye. Thank you, Rick.
Welcome.
Okay, so, Ben.
Yes.
What do we got next?
Well, let me flip my paper over here. We got a local one. Meg from Blackstone, Massachusetts, writes to us, I think your theories about the paranormal make sense. I really enjoy your talks at the Blackstone Library. But do you have any paranormal cases or paranormal experiences where you or others encounter the parallel future instead of just the past?
Oh, that's a good question.
It is a very good question, actually. Yeah.
We do. There are some theories that the UFOs and their occupants that are sometimes seen are indeed future people, sometimes from the remote future. Even in the Rendlesham Forest case, there have been examples of people who believe that these were time travelers, essentially. And since time doesn't exist that way, you move sideways rather than forwards and backwards, as a physicist told me. That could very easily be sort of something from the future rather than, a Marie Antoinette skipping through the gardens of wherever, Paris, before the revolution, that sort of thing. So there's that. I'll turn this over to the other fellows here, but when we first moved into our house, where you essentially grew up, Ben, here in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, I put a dark room into our basement because, believe it or not, these were the days when you'd still develop your own film and all this stuff, and things weren't digital. And it was an unfinished basement at the time. And there was someone in the corner over where my office is now. Now, in future years, that would have been, the basement was refinished, and I put my office in a corner over there where I spend like 90% of my time during working periods when we're not out, chasing Bigfoot or being chased by something, that sort of thing. And it was like I knew I was looking at myself, another facet of myself, which of course would be today over in that corner. It wasn't like scary or haunting or anything, but it was someone there, and I think it was me. So that's just a personal example. Rick or Ben, what?
I'll go first, I guess. What's fascinating about that question is I think a lot of people have these instances. I've always believed this, that deja vu isn't just a firing of the brain synapse. Deja vu is something that you're either experienced in the timeline, either before, after, or during. I've always thought that, like in the instance you're talking about right now, where you see yourself in the corner or feel yourself in the corner, I can think of lots of instances where I've been somewhere before, or I'm even there now, if that makes any sense. So I've always thought that kind of played into it, and I thought it was a much more common experience than we think about. I can't think of anyone who hasn't experienced deja vu in some way or form.
Oh, exactly. Ben?
Yes. It's interesting. I think, I don't know, I feel like we talk a lot about time and how it doesn't really matter, but somehow we still manage to perceive it. There was a really interesting article I read a while ago, which was called The Earth is Flat Most of the Time, and it's a really interesting article. I highly recommend it. It's by this guy named Jonathan Pajot, who's a really interesting dude, and he writes that he was like, yeah, scientifically we know that the world is round, but the way we perceive it is flat, right? We don't perceive the world being round. We just...
Well, unless you're in space.
Well, right, yeah. How many of us have gone to space? Raise your hands.
Well, it depends on how you mean going to space. Anyway.
Right, yeah. Well, then we really get down into epistemology. Anyway, but essentially the idea is that, how we perceive things, right, is kind of our reality, whether it's right or wrong, right? So it's like, because there's an objective reality, but how we perceive it is really the important, is just kind of how it happens, right? So we perceive everything as being flat. But the same goes for time, right? We perceive there being a past, present, future, but it's not really there. As much as we try to get by it and live timelessly, unfortunately, we live in a world that forces us by rigorous time frames, right? Because we're trying to control everything. If we really wanted to get real crazy and just say, well, time doesn't exist, we would just keep going with the show and never stop. Right? But unfortunately we
could today with all these questions.
We could, but unfortunately we only have about almost about 12 minutes left in this hour, and then we're gone. But so unfortunately, as much as we say time doesn't exist, we're stuck to this sort of construct of, okay, well, this thing's ticking, therefore time exists.
Right.
So it's in sort of a paranormal, we're going to put it in a paranormal cubicle here. I think how we perceive the experience is the important thing, right? If you perceive a Civil War soldier in front of you, who's to say that the Civil War isn't going on right now, or in the future, or going on in the past, or whatever? But the important thing is, it doesn't matter because it's happening right now. In the only thing that we can know is going on is what's happening now. And even then, I'm not even sure what's happening, right? At one point, my coffee was full, and now it's not. What happened? I drank it, I guess, but who knows?
I drank it.
Maybe you did. Yeah. Maybe you secretly like coffee, and after all of these years, you drink coffee.
No.
Yeah, see? That's
parallel worlds only.
Exactly. So the idea is that the only thing that we really know is now. And, we can plan and plan and plan. That's why I never really make plans for the future, because I have no clue what's going to happen in 2 seconds, let alone in 5 years. Because it's, I just do the best I can with what I have. And the same goes with the paranormal, which is we work with the data we have, which really isn't much.
Yes. So, Rick, a couple of quick comments, because there's one more question I want to get to.
Okay. No, I think this is actually really applicable to everything we talked about today. When we opened up before the show, you were telling me the fire hose worth of questions we're getting. And the funny part about it is they all are on the same topic feeding into here. So maybe something is going on right now spiritually with the questioning on the show.
All we know is now. Maybe.
Well, it would be the end of the world as we know it if we didn't have a question from Peter Shelley in Colombia, South America. So he has a question about what happens when you die. I don't think we can do that in a few minutes.
No, probably not.
So we'll go to the question he just sent in.
Sue, Peter writes to us, this is a question for Rick. So, latest UFO cases that you've investigated. You have 10 minutes.
Well, let me just say I'm not in the best mood because Paul, I'd love to hear your experience of this. I just got hoaxed really bad on a case, and you put a lot of hours in, you get this thing ready, and then all of a sudden you figure out quickly, like, oh God, I've been stooped. So that was my latest case, and I'll just tell you, I'm not going to tell you much about it, except the fact where it started going south was when one of the witnesses was identifying themselves as Jesus Christ, living on Angel Street in heaven. That should have been up front, but sometimes...
Angel Street.
Yeah, Angel Street. And it got weirder from there. And the thing is, when you get a case, sometimes these people don't have always... They're normal people, right? They have unique emails, unique names. I know Jesus is a popular name. I know people actually named Jesus Christ. So I take it all very seriously. But the case started to unravel, and then it almost get comedic after about 20 hours worth of work. So, and that's the side of the UFO cases you're not really going to hear out there. But that's one of the most painful ones I've just had. That was not fun. Paul, have you ever been in that situation where you find out you're getting hoaxed?
Yes. Well, sometimes people don't know they're hoaxing. I mean, we had cases. I don't know. You were involved in that case in Providence. There was a lovely family.
Yes.
Who it was like pareidolia on steroids. They would see strange shapes in the sheets or the towels piled on the floor. And they were convinced the place was haunted, that there would be obvious lens effects in the security cameras outside, and they would say, well, it's ghosts or UFOs or orbs. And you couldn't argue with them. They were just convinced. And so it wasn't really a hoax. They were very sincere, but it was a waste of our time. And it got to the point where the lady, lovely, wonderful person, was calling me all the time, and Ben's mom was getting a little bit upset about it. And so I kind of had to put a stop to it. But there are a lot of people today who want to be on TV, whereas when I started out, nobody wanted to be anywhere near that for publicity. Right. So so I did. I don't know about you, Ben. Because you work on your own sometimes.
Well, I don't think it's hoaxes so much as sort of misunderstandings of very normal stuff. Like I went to I played pickup basketball with a couple of guys from this school in northern Massachusetts, and it's this little tiny private school. It's you'd probably really like it, Dad, because it looks like an old English manor in the middle of these woods, and it's a really kind of cool place.
What's the name of the school?
I will not give it out because that is I don't feel
Deerfield.
No.
I had a lot of friends there.
No.
Anyway, all right.
No, you've probably never heard of it. It's only been made within the last 30 years.
Oh.
So it's but it's an interesting place. I had a lot of friends that go
200
there.
years old.
As we were driving up, good friend of mine who's driving me up there because we live in the same area was saying, "Oh yeah, there was all this stuff happening. This guy committed a bunch of murders in these woods and blah blah blah." And they call it Blood Forest, and I was like, I was like, okay. He was like, yeah, you'd really like it. It's paranormal stuff. And I'm like, okay. So we get to this place, and I'm looking at it, and and they're like, oh yeah, we saw lights turn on here and all this stuff happening. I'm just like, this place is super old. When's the last time the electrical's been updated? And they were like, oh, I don't know. And it's like, well, you probably have faulty wiring. Yeah. And it's like, who knows if it hasn't been updated since the early 1900s, or
well, burns down, blame it on ghosts.
Well, right, yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? You could have electrical leaks, it's middle of sand pit country, so it's got sandy soils. It's raining, it's. Yeah. It was super wet area, marshes. It's like, okay, well, all of this could be very easily explained. I'm pretty sure it's not, some crazy guy that probably didn't exist, So I think, it's I don't think I've ever been hoaxed, but it's living where anybody does, right? There's always urban legends and stuff, and people take it very seriously.
They do, especially in schools.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I can tell you about a case up near Worcester at that time. It's in my book, Footsteps in the Attic. But in any case, I think we probably better get into our announcements here. And thank you to everyone who sent in all these great questions. We'll pick them up at our next open line show, and we'll hopefully get to all of them there, and then we'll pile up. We're going to have to do 2 shows back to back, I think, at some point again. All right, so on July 3rd, in an arrangement that came together quite suddenly, Ben and I were able to interview the legendary Jacques Vallée, along with our friend and science journalist Paul Lupizzi Harris. The subject was the little-known Trinity UFO crash of 1945, which took place in New Mexico nearly 2 years before the much-better-known Roswell crash. Paula and Dr. Vallée recently interviewed 2 surviving witnesses who actually saw the crash and recovered debris from the craft. This interview is now on the Behind the Paranormal Case Files YouTube channel. And Ben, I don't know if you want to say anything about that channel.
Yeah, you can just look us up on YouTube, Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, or just type in our names. Eventually, you'll find something about us. Hopefully, good. And it should lead you to our YouTube channel. All of our past shows are on there. We have a couple special videos that we have on there from various cases and whatnot. We're hoping to do more with it. As time. Unfortunately, we are stuck to that rigorous clock. There's not, we're doing the best we can with what we have. So,
okay, very good.
But this should be it was a really fascinating interview. I was excited. I'm pretty sure I've never seen my dad as excited for anything in his life.
Well, he's been a hero of mine since. That's how. He's a lot older than I am.
No, you were a little starstruck. I've never seen you like that before.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. It doesn't take.
It doesn't really happen. I've never seen it. Never seen it happen.
People don't impress me generally, but he does. Anyway, there we are. So, YouTube channel, Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Yes, and our show now has its own app. It's bare bones. Most of our past shows are on there, so you can check us out on that. But we do plan to add features as we go. Should be on the Apple and Google stores soon, and there's a link at BehindTheParanormal.com if you'd like to not wait that long and download it there.
Check out our books along with those of our great guest co-hosts at our show website. Rick, you have to write a book now. BehindTheParanormal.com, where you also can find more about the show, our many cases over the years, our public appearances, and how to book us, along with some of our 900-plus free recorded shows from our 13-plus years on the air, including our 4.5-year run on CBS Radio. And we've almost got them all uploaded again. There'll be some I'd say another month or two we'll have them all there. Past shows back to 2009, almost 2008, are also available on the major podcast platforms, including YouTube, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live, and more.
And on our website, we have our charity page with several links to charities that we have adopted on the show. And now we have added a new charity, which is Hope for Hilldale Cemetery in Haverhill, Massachusetts. And we had Tom Spitaleri, the head of the board there, and he does a lot of great work, doing an amazing job.
Amazing guy.
Indeed. And, if you're from New England, then you understand, these historic cemeteries, they're usually, falling apart, decrepit. Does a great job up there. And other charities include USA Cares, Canadian Veterans Advocacy, Helping Haiti's Orphans, Youth Mentoring Connections in Los Angeles, the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation of America, and the Sisterhood of Ground Zero, along with the Milk Fund here in northern Rhode Island.
Rick, what's going on with you, Rick?
Well, I'm hoping to see you in a month or two in Arizona. That would be outstanding. Or is that in October? When was that a possibility? Was that October?
Yeah, well, I've been asked to speak there, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to do that. Also, I'm working 3 cases right now. I'm trying to put some together so I can come on the show and do a quick hit on 3 cases that are happening. I'm just trying to refine them down, and we'll see when that comes together.
Okay, we're out of time. We'll let you guess about next week. Anyway, I'm Paul Eno.
I'm Ben Eno.
And I'm Rick Eno. Thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we'll see you next time on Behind the Paranormal.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Yeah. I just texted it to you. Her name is Claire.